to talk to you about a phenomenon that has swept the world. Hundreds of millions of people utilize this, and many savvy business people have become very rich off of this. And of course, I am talking about social media and social networking. So when I talk about social media, I'm talking about any sort of online media platform used to for social interaction. So Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, if anybody still logs onto MySpace anymore, but Tumblr, any of the blogs and stuff like that. Okay. Now, before I get started, I must acknowledge that there are benefits that come from social media and using social networking. An example would be if you live out of the country or out of the state and you want to stay connected to your friends and family. Certainly, this is a great way to do just that. But however, there are negative long-term effects that overshadow these short-term benefits that we get. And what are those negative effects, you might be asking? Well, the first one is the heavy use of social media negatively affects the healthy growth and development of social skills in young kids and teenagers. And the second negative effect is that it also affects adults and society as a whole by modifying the values and beliefs that make up social norms in a negative way. So on my first point, that heavy use of social media negatively affects healthy growth and development of children. To start off, I don't have to mention that the internet is a huge part of everybody's life, but it's a huge part of life for young kids as well, going through school and socializing and stuff. And the lack of human contact affects how kids learn how to interact with others and deal with challenging situations. According to Susan Greenfield, who's a professor of pharmacology at Oxford University and the director of the Royal Institution of Great Britain, she talks about how social interactions conducted through computer screens are fundamentally different from spoken conversations, which she said are far more perilous than electronic interactions because they occur in real time and with no opportunity to think of clever and witty responses. So this changes how kids participate and perceive relationships that they're in. So it's going to have a huge effect. Also, the non-physical interaction contributes to bullying. That's a popular thing to talk about nowadays. Bullying has been around, with kids forever, since the dawn of man, I'm sure. But the way that they handle it now online, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought looking at that card. So the way that kids deal with bullying, they're hiding behind a computer screen, so they don't have to face the repercussions that would normally take place during a face-to-face interaction. So that's also an unhealthy, negative aspect to it as well, because it's non-confrontational confrontation, basically. My second point talks about how the heavy use of social media affects society by modifying values and behavior. And overall, it creates a false sense of reality for a lot of people. According to Dr. Eric Sigmund, who is a member of the Royal Society of Medicine, he's also been heavily published in respected biology journals, he says that time that was previously spent interacting socially has increasingly been displaced by the virtual variety. Social networking encourages us to ignore the social networks that form in our non-virtual communities. The time we spend socializing electronically separates us from our physical networks. So people basically, they get too caught up in the whole, social networking thing. Another negative aspect is that it fuels unhealthy behavior, like stalking and fixating on people that you may or may not know in real life. Photoshopping pictures to portray an image that is different from reality. And it also promotes narcissistic personality disorder, which is actually a personality disorder recognized by the DSM. And in their study on social media and narcissism, University of Georgia professors Laura Buffardi and Keith Campbell, in their study, they showed a correlation between heavy use of social media and narcissistic personality disorder. And they talk about how narcissists do not focus on interpersonal intimacy, warmth, or other positive long-term relational outcomes. But they are very skilled at both initiating relationships and using relationships to look popular, successful, and high in status in the short term. So this, clearly there's a correlation between the two. Another problem is that heavy social media use creates problems for people at work, because personal information is universally acceptable. So let's say somebody has a little too much fun on their vacation, cameras and alcohol is involved, pictures are taken, they're put up on the internet. You might have a problem once you go back to work. And then also another issue is that, let's see here. Information provided, even on ostensibly private social networks, is effectively public data that could exist for as long as anybody has an incentive to maintain it. Many entities, from marketers to employers to national and foreign security agencies, may have those incentives. And also, corporations are investing in text recognition software from vendors such as SAP and IBM to monitor blogs by employees and job candidates. So basically, this is just scratching the surface of problems, long-term effects that will come from heavy social networking use. And thank you for your time.
Well, I thought your claim sounded clearer at the beginning than it did at the end. At the end, it sounds more like it's a mild summary and warning about what these issues are, as opposed to a notion that there is, in fact, a substantial problem that's coming. I thought you did a very good job previewing what the supporting points were going to be. There are only 2 of them. You labeled them pretty clearly. They do seem to be lengthy statements, and you kind of can save your explanations for those points until you get to each of them instead of including them in the preview. I thought that you had some pretty good testimony evidence on a couple of the points, especially at the beginning of the second point. You're a little dependent on hypotheticals in a couple of places, and we could use some practical examples to show that any of this is going on. There's basically next to no statistical information in this, and I think that that's one of the things that's missing, because although an abuse might occur, the frequency of that kind of abuse, or the likelihood that those kinds of problems are going to come up, I think a lot of people will poo-poo that. Okay, so I wrote something on a blog, but what's the likelihood that some company is going to find me in the future and sue me, or I'm not going to get a job, or my Facebook picture is going to become public. If you had some cases where that happened, if we knew that this was occurring more frequently, if you had any statistics about how often that was used in job screening processes, that would be very helpful there. All right, thank you.